The city of Mebane, North Carolina, is located 23 miles northwest of Durham and 32 miles due east of Greensboro. The town was named for Brigadier General Alexander Mebane, who served in the Revolutionary War. Before 1849, the land Mebane now occupies was entirely in Orange County. It was largely undeveloped at that point, but due to the efforts of Giles Mebane, a grandson of Alexander Mebane, it would not remain that way for long. In 1849, Giles Mebane introduced a bill in the North Carolina House of Commons to portion off a section of Orange County to create a new county. The new county was named Alamance at the suggestion of Mary Yancey Mebane, Giles's wife, and Giles proposed that the new county seat be called Graham, in honor of Governor William A. Graham. Giles Mebane was a visionary who saw the benefits of the railroad to the economy of North Carolina. He was instrumental in the chartering of the North Carolina Railroad in 1849 and was responsible for a contract to build 6 miles of rail bed. By 1856, 223 miles of track had been completed, taking passengers and freight from Goldsboro all the way to Charlotte. The advantage of access to a railroad was recognized early on as a great boon to those who needed to travel and to transport materials to and from market. As time went by, families started to relocate to be closer to the railroad, and the town of Mebanesville was incorporated by 1881. The name, which proved hard to spell, was simplified to Mebane in 1883. It is thought that the first house to be built in Mebane was owned by Stephen A. White, whose sons would go on to found the White Furniture Company in 1881. The second house, named Kalm Krest by its owner, was built by Dr. Benjamin Franklin Mebane. Kalm Krest was built just south of the railroad on what is now 5th Street. Both of these sturdy structures still stand. The White Furniture Company building was repurposed to become an apartment complex, and Kalm Krest is now home to a group of professional offices. Dr. Mebane was a well-respected physician who first attended the University of North Carolina, a school his ancestor Alexander Mebane helped to found, and then the medical college at the University of Pennsylvania. In 1850, he returned to his family home at Mason Hall, located a few miles north of modern-day Mebane, and began to build his practice. Dr. Mebane married Fanny Lavinia Carr in 1857. The marriage was a very happy one, and by 1858, their first child, Mary Belle Mebane, was born. By 1860, Dr. Mebane had moved his practice from Mason Hall to his new home, Kalm Krest. An entry in his physician's daybook from April 1860 shows the first entry from Mebanesville. The doctor was also working on a new patent medicine which he named Taraxacum tonic. The recipe for Taraxacum tonic remains a secret, but is likely made in part from the dandelion plant, which is known for its medicinal qualities. Taraxacum tonic would become wildly successful and was shipped all over the country from the Mebane Depot, located at that time only a block away from Kalm Krest. The tonic was an aid to digestion and lacked the objectionable side effects of the then popular calomel. The Mebanes would go on to have a total of 10 children, 5 of whom survived to adulthood. In 1885, their first child, Mary Belle, would marry James Edwin Scott, the son of Margaret and Henderson Scott, joining together 2 of the pioneer families of this region, known as the Hawfields. But more about this later. Around the time that Dr. Mebane was building Kalm Krest, Henderson Scott, James Edwin's father, was busy with his own projects. Henderson had inherited farmland from his father a few miles south of Kalm Krest, but his real goal was to build a set of businesses. Henderson would go on to set up a store, a post office, a tannery, and a blacksmith shop. Like Dr. Mebane, Henderson Scott was well aware of the importance of the railroad and the growth it would bring to Mebanesville. He built a store in Mebanesville in 1868, The building was in use until 1973, when it was demolished to make way for a bank. Not everyone was content to stay in the Hawfields, however. John Mebane Allen, Henderson's nephew, had recently moved his family to Arkansas in search of a more prosperous future. In a letter to his nephew, Henderson expresses his hope to visit John and his family someday.
Belleville, North Carolina, May 2nd, 1853. Dear nephew, I hope you're bettering yourself by moving. I would be glad to see your place and to walk over your land and to look at it and to see your cotton fields, for they must look nice in the fall when the cotton is open. But you must not be surprised to see me out in your country. When we get the railroad close to Tennessee, it will not be but a few days' ride out to see you. Perhaps by that time I will be able to spend a few dollars and time to come out to see you. It would afford me great pleasure if such a thing ever should take place. Hope you will soon make enough money to spare to come back to the old North State and see us all.
Despite his good intentions, Henderson Scott would never see his nephew again. Henderson died in 1870 after surgery on an injured ankle. Margaret, who was known as a practical and loving mother, raised the children and made sure that they all received a good education. All three of Henderson and Margaret's sons went on to start businesses. Sam ran a store in Mebansville and shipped local produce all the way to New York City. Robert, who studied agriculture and progressive farming at Houghton Farm in Mountainville, New York, worked hard to create the Alamance Stock Farm. Unlike his brothers, James Edwin dreamed of owning a cotton factory. He had a good education, first at the Bingham School and later at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, but neither of these experiences would provide him with business acumen, something he knew he lacked. After completing 1 year at UNC, he decided to pursue further training at the Eastman College of Business in Poughkeepsie, New York. The Eastman School was fairly new and known for its innovative curriculum. The school included a model insurance office and a model bank. James Edwin tried several career paths before returning home in 1880. After selling his interest in the home place to his brother Robert, he bought a property in Mebane. Here he operated a tobacco factory across the street from his brother Sam's store. The letterhead on his stationery read, James Edwin Scott, Manufacturer of Tobacco, Mebanville, North Carolina. For a while, Brother Robert served as a drummer or traveling salesman for the company. Robert's real interest was in developing a successful stock farm, and after a few years of helping James Edwin, he quit sales and devoted himself to raising fine horses, cows, sheep, and pigs. By 1885, the year of his marriage, James Edwin was well established in business. He employed 35 hands making plug tobacco and smoking tobacco. It was not the cotton factory he had dreamed of, but he looked forward to becoming a leader in his community and perhaps even a philanthropist. James Edwin and his fiancée, Mary Belle Mebane, had much in common. Their families attended Hawfields Presbyterian Church, and James Edwin and Mary Belle's brothers all attended the Bingham School. Their fathers had been successful businessmen and leaders in their community. The wedding had to be a quiet affair. Mary Belle was still in mourning for her father, who passed away in 1884. They decided that the wedding should take place at Kalm Krest, the bride's home. The couple married in the late afternoon, and as their guests settled down to a fine meal, the newlyweds boarded the train for a honeymoon trip out west. James Edwin and Mary Belle lived with her mother Fanny for the first year of their marriage. In 1886, after their daughter Margaret Graham Scott was born, they had found a home for themselves a few blocks away from Kalm Krest. In a letter dated November 30th, 1886, James Edwin thanks his mother Margaret, for whom their daughter was named, for all the wonderful things she provided to make their new home comfortable. Her gifts included money, furniture, bedding, a flock of chickens, and even a cow. The young family looked forward to a bright future. It came as a terrible blow to the Scott and Mebane families when James Edwin died in 1888 at the age of 30. He had been in declining health for a few months, and it was at his mother's home that he breathed his last. He was buried alongside his ancestors in the cemetery at Hawfields Presbyterian Church. For a time, Mary Belle was uncertain as to where her future lay. She contemplated moving with her 2-year-old daughter Margie to Greensboro, no doubt to be closer to her brother George's family. In the end, however, she decided to move back to Kalm Krest and raise her daughter in familiar surroundings. The household at this time consisted of grandmother Fanny, Mary Belle, Mary Belle's younger sister Fanny, little Margie, and at least part of the time Aunt Mat, grandmother Fanny's maiden sister-in-law. Guarding the ladies were two pit bulls, Tempest and Fury. Mary Belle's brothers and their families were frequent visitors to Kalm Krest as Margie grew up. George Allen, a physician, lived in Greensboro. James, known to the family as Jinx, worked in Washington, D.C. B. Frank, who lived in Spray, North Carolina, was a wealthy mill owner. As the years passed, Mary Belle found meaning and purpose as a Sunday school teacher and mainstay of Mebane Presbyterian Church, located at that time 1 mile east from the center of town and right across the street from the Bingham School. By 1912, the number of Presbyterians in Mebane had increased to the point that a new church building was proposed. The new church would be located on 5th Street, where it still stands today. David A. White, co-founder of White Furniture Company, spearheaded the effort. The new church building, now called the Baker Building, was completed in 1914 and was dedicated in 1917. A beautiful stained glass window commemorates Dr. Benjamin Franklin Mebane and his wife Fanny Lavinia's devotion to their church. James Edwin and Mary Belle's daughter, Margaret Graham, called Margie, grew up and attended Peace Institute in Raleigh. She was a teacher for a number of years before marrying John Rumpel Ross, a businessman, in 1914. The couple moved north, first to Philadelphia and later to Haddonfield, New Jersey, and started their own family. John and Margie's only daughter, Mary Belle Mebane Ross, was born in 1923. In December of 1923, a few months after her granddaughter was born, Mary Belle Scott was visiting her daughter's family when she died suddenly from a heart attack. Her remains were returned to Mebane and buried in Oakwood Cemetery after a funeral held at Kalm Krest. The service was led by her pastor, Dr. A.W. Shaw. Dr. W.L. Poteet, a relative and president of Wake Forest College, sang 3 of her favorite hymns: Asleep in Jesus, Lead Kindly Light, and Abide with Me. Kalm Krest passed out of the Mebane family in 1940 and was at first a private residence and later became a bed and breakfast. Most recently, this beautiful and historic structure is the home to a number of professional offices. The house has been a witness to the history of a thriving community, which through the years has been called Mebanesville, and then Mebane, and today is known as the City of Mebane.